Hello and welcome to the Calmcast, a time to feel calm and think clearly. I'm Claire Downham, the Queen of Calm, a transformational life coach. I was a burnt out head teacher who finally made the journey to calm after years of trying, and I want to prevent you from having to do the same. The Calmcast is a series of short explorations, gently guiding you back to your natural state, which is calm and clarity. Just listen like you would listen to music, with an open mind and curiosity. There's nothing else to do. Now let's relax into today's episode. So today's little exploration is around trying to control thoughts. And at the moment, you may be able to hear it's where I am in the world. It is absolutely chucking it down with rain. And as I watch the raindrops fall, it feels like a beautiful metaphor for this, really. You know, it's like trying to control the weather. And I don't know if you've tried to do that. I'm quite surprised that the British government haven't kind of well, they've been a bit busy actually, but they haven't kind of decided that we could increase our tourism if we tried to control our weather a little bit more. But it doesn't make sense to us, does it, to do that? And I guess there's something connected to thought in that way, that I don't get to decide that it is raining this morning heavily and it's dark and dreary. And it might not be my preference to have that particular weather going on. And you don't really choose the weather that goes on inside you in terms of what thinking appears in your head. But if you think that you do, if you have been convinced, because it would be very easy to be convinced, wouldn't it, that that you can control your thinking, because there's a lot of people out there selling that as an option, promoting it, all well-meaning and all innocently. It looks like, well, that's something you can train yourself to do. Train yourself to have better thoughts, and then you'll be a better person. I mean, anybody else kind of notice that message out there? You can be a better person if you have better thoughts. You may well have noticed it. But here's how I see that contributing to that overwhelmed feeling that you no doubt have if you're listening to me. It's almost like a layering up process. You know, when a thought appears in your head, it's okay. Like, it's just a thought. But here's what I think happens inside a lot of us a lot of the time, is there's a noticing, an awareness, first of all. It's just a simple thing, a noticing of a thought, a consciousness of a thought that has appeared inside us. And they can be the most random, strange things. And sometimes we have random, strange thoughts and we just manage to ignore them, don't we? We're not really bothered by them. But other times, it starts with that judgment catalyst. The first thing is the judgment, isn't it? Oh, that's not a nice thought, or that's not a useful thought. It's not a helpful thought. It's not the kind of thought that the me, this person, who doesn't really exist anyway, but it's not the kind of thought I should be having. That's not okay to have that kind of thought. And with that judgment comes a need to do something about it. Now, that need might be fulfilled in some kind of exploration. Where did this thought come from? Who put this thought there? Was it somebody in my past, etc., etc.? That's a lot of thinking, isn't it? Now, underpinning all of this that I'm pointing to is this understanding that your feeling of overwhelm only comes from one place, and that is having a head that's full of stuff. It doesn't really come from the outside world. So you can see now that overwhelm feeling increasing because you've had a thought, and that was a simple little bit of energy that has the ability to pass, just like the weather. If we leave it be, it will pass and something else will come. And after that thought, there's been some judgment, which is some more thinking. And then on top of that, there's been some thinking about why the thought appeared and where's it come from. And then on top of that, there may well be some tools or techniques or something, or some self-berating. I mean, that's a classic, isn't it? Some self-berating, some telling ourselves off for having the negative thought in the first place. And then guess what? Your head, and mine sometimes too, is absolutely full of noise, overthinking. And all there was in the first place was this little thought that innocently appeared in your head. Like, the thought isn't yours. It isn't you that put it there. It doesn't mean anything about you. It is not a problem that you have a negative thought. It is a problem if you think that defines something about you. So that's the kind of current process that you may be going through. There's a thought, and then there's judgment, and then there's analysis, and then there's some doing to try and get rid of it. And then if there's another thought, another negative thought, that becomes even more big, doesn't it? It becomes huge. And then there's a different way to do this. I don't like to say to do. There's a different way to connect. There's a different understanding about thought. So before I share kind of a different way to do this, it's worth just understanding the perspective from which I'm coming from. And that is the truth, that thought is creating your experience. That overwhelmed feeling is coming to you via thought in the moment, or too much thought in the moment. The overwhelmed feeling is a sign of your head being full of noise, not anything to do with the outside world. So a different way to consider all of this is that your superpower is awareness. And when you notice a negative thought, if there's just awareness of that, oh, that's interesting, there's a thought there. Full stop. The thought isn't right or wrong. The thought came from who knows where, but who cares? Like, do you really need to know where it came from? You don't know where it came from. You could do all the psychoanalysis in the world and you still wouldn't know where that thought came from. So why bother? Is kind of my view of it. Take it or leave it. And then there's nothing else. It's without the judgment. The judgment is the catalyst that sends your thinking into overthinking, and then that overwhelmed feeling. But what if there was just this awareness? Oh, how interesting. There's a thought. And that there is almost, like I have mentioned before, there is this swipe left. I don't need to get involved in that and proceed with life. Now, it's easier said than done, of course, but it's underpinned by an understanding of how all this system works. When you know that overwhelmed feeling comes from overthinking, not from anywhere else, when you realize that, there is more of an inclination to let those thoughts just pass by. So there's nothing to do. And that is the joy of this conversation. I don't know about you, but I've done a lot of things, an awful lot of things, in an attempt to fix myself. And it turns out it's not much fun. Awareness is your superpower. Awareness is the thing. It's the only thing that you need. And when there's just some awareness with no judgment, what there is a lot more of is space. And we all work better when there is space. Thank you so much for listening. There's nothing to do now but bring some awareness to how this is working out in your life. Listen regularly to experience longer and longer periods of calm. This has been the Calmcast with Claire Downham, Queen of Calm. Take care and keep listening.